Let's create a pretty card using a new mini stamp. Hello everyone, welcome to Creative Coloring with Erum. I'm Erum Tasneem and today I will be creating an easy but pretty card featuring a new mini stamp set. So the stamp that I will be using today is called the Sweet Cluster stamp. It is a 2x3 stamp and it also has a coordinating die. Since this is a new stamp, I'll use my stamp conditioning eraser over it to remove any glossiness. If you find that there is some residue from the stamp conditioning eraser, use a flat paintbrush to remove all the pieces. I have this 9x12 watercolor cardstock from the 9x12 watercolor pad, and I am prepping my surface with corn flour. You can use your anti-static powder, but I find that this works so much better than anything I have bought from the store. And I believe that we call it corn flour, but you guys in the US call it cornstarch. Just remember it's white and it's not yellow. The yellow one is the corn flour, the actual flour that we make bread or the chapatis out of. I'll stamp several flowers onto the cardstock, making sure I'm pressing it down firmly as the cardstock is textured. Once done, I'll pour over rose gold embossing powder and then heat set it. As this is textured, make sure to keep moving your heat tool and not to have it too close to the cardstock. Otherwise, the embossing powder will kind of just absorb into the cardstock as it burns. And it's not that it looks bad. It gives a foil gilded kind of look. So if you are going for the foiled look, then absolutely go ahead and burn off your embossing powder. But I'm not going to do that. Not today anyway. The colors I'll be using are cotton candy, coral berry, and for the leaves I'll be using espresso. These are from the 36 pan watercolor set. For the brush, I'm using the number 1 brush from the fine brushes set. Since this is a small floral image from a very small stamp set, I thought this was the perfect brush to use. I will apply water to the petals, carefully avoiding the flower center. And because I'm using the fine brush, this is easy to do. The reason I'm avoiding the flower center is because I don't want to contaminate the areas, as I've not yet decided what color my flower center will be. Now I'll apply some water onto the pan, add a bit of it onto the palette. This helps me control the concentration of the pigment better. Then I'll add the pigment onto the petals. Always start light, but even if you add a dark pigment, you can use a tissue to pick it up as we added water first instead of the pigment. So this makes it easier for us to take away the pigment from the cardstock as it is saturated. Again, this is easy loose watercolor, and you know how I love the loose flowy watercolor technique. And I've talked about this before as well. This helps you color images in a shorter amount of time. I'll also share another way to color image in case you do not like the stippled, splotchy look of the flowers and like your images beautifully blended. I'll use my heat tool to make the process faster. If you can see, we have some shaded flowers here already. So if you want, you can stop here. They look really pretty with the rose gold embossing, but I'll add some stippling now. And this is not your regular fine stippling that I usually add. These are more like splotches. To add a bit more shading, I'll take some coral berry pigment as well and mix it with a bit of cotton candy and add it as finely as I can next to the flower center. Since the petals are wet, this will diffuse on its own. For the leaves, apply water, then apply pigment. Always apply pigment from where the leaves start, as it also helps in achieving the shadow that they should have as they're coming from under the flowers. And just like the flowers, I'll dry this to the first layer and then add a darker pigment. Again, splotchy, splotchy, splotchy second layer. At first I thought I would do yellow centers, but now I have another idea, and for that I need a brown base. It can be light or dark. You will see what I'm going to do later on. Okay, so I said I would show you one more way to color the flowers. A smooth, non-splotchy look. I will apply water to the petal. Then I'll apply pigment next to the flower center and pull it out. If you want the tip of the petal to be light, then place your paintbrush at the tip of the petal. Pull away the pigment towards the flower center. Now drop the pigment again next to the flower center and use your brush like you would use a pencil and softly blend the pigment. Stop midway, clean your brush and then blend that pigment. Try to avoid touching or going over the tip of the petals. And if you do by mistake, just pick up the pigment as I showed you. This process takes a bit more time, but it gives a very soft blended look to the flower. Also, you can add coral berry to this too if you want to add a darker color or a little definition to your flower. Now this is very smooth compared to this, and a lot more smoother compared to the very first one I colored with the splotchy effect. The second one has lighter, some of the same effect, but the third one has much more lighter of the same effect and no stippling on the fourth. I took a Woodgrain Powder Cardstock panel and arranged my florals after die cutting them. I'll use my washi tape and secure these so I can just put foam tape behind them when I'm ready to adhere these onto the panel. This is a great tip by Lydia that I often use when I'm not using the press and seal. At this point, I thought of adding some stamping. For this, I'm using the Dainty Swiss Dots stamp and I'll be adding partial stamping. What you see me doing right now is creating masks for my partial stamping. I'm just using a scrap piece of paper that I've lying around. This is from my invoice actually. I'll then apply anti-static powder onto the Woodgrain Powder Cardstock and then apply embossing ink onto the stamp. Place my mask, stamp my background, and this does not need to be perfect. This could be grungy. Grungier the better. Then I'll stamp the second area I want to add stamping to, and then pour over rose gold embossing powder and heat set it. But before that, I'll use a paintbrush and remove some of the powder off from the edges because I do not want crisp edges and a very defined outline. I want more of a distressed look. Once done, I'll just heat set this and it looks absolutely super pretty with the wood grain and the rose gold embossing. Now you can stop here if you want to, but I'll add watercolor to my background. You knew that was coming. You absolutely knew that was coming. But this isn't going to be very bold. It's going to be very, very subtle and light. Okay, so this isn't watercolor cardstock, but I didn't add very pigmented color on there. My colors are really light. They are there to accentuate the flowers and not overpower them. I'll be adding both cotton candy and espresso. It already looks very pretty. As soon as I added that cotton candy on there, it started looking so nice. And as soon as I added that espresso, at first I thought that I just messed it up. But when espresso, when you add it with pink, the cotton candy, it also gives out a bit of pink tint of itself, which also looks really cool. It has a bit of a pink base. So it goes with the cotton candy and works very well with it. It doesn't have a yellow tone to it. It has a pinky tone to it. So it works well in this case. So I won't be coloring the entire panel, but I'll try to balance it. So I'll be adding this watercolor where I think I need it. And once done, I'll heat set it and add very fine black splatters just to break away from the pinkiness of the card. And also because I'll heat emboss my sentiment onto black cardstock. So this will balance that. I'll adhere my florals. They are already on foam tape and I've already forgotten the placement by now. But it's okay because this also looks so pretty, you guys. The card is looking really nice, so you should try it yourself. The rose gold embossing powder combined with Woodgrain Powder Cardstock, the espresso watercolor and the cotton candy watercolor. Also add a bit of coral berry. I'll now add some metallic splatters from the 14 pan metallic watercolor set. And then I'll add the smallest sequin from the satin gold sequins and add that as my flower centers. And look how pretty it looks. I've not glued it yet, but I will be gluing this on in a bit. So just wanted to show you how pretty it looks. And that is all. I popped my sentiment on my pretty card and it turned out really nice. I love these colors together and I hope you liked it as well. Thank you for watching, everyone. Bye.